day. It's currently 8 minutes after 10 o'clock. You are inside Brunch. Let me start by welcoming my guest, my first guest on the local scene. He is a political analyst, former University of the West Indies senior lecturer, Winford James. It is always a great pleasure to have the doctor with me. Doctor, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Rennie B.
Good morning.
To be here. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Looking dapper, looking wonderful and dapper this morning, so that's a good thing. I need to get some more volume into your cans. I will take care of that. But let me start by asking you, sir, we just got past the Tobago House of Assembly elections.
Yes.
Getting past those elections, we had a 10-2 result compared to all 12 that was held by the PNM before. The Prime Minister said, listen, the 2013 situation, listen, that was because the UNC had an obnoxious presence in Tobago, and that was a very unusual situation. But 10-2, I will take that, and I congratulate my people. Do you agree that this was a resounding endorsement for the PNM, sir?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, the results are clear. It's 10 seats to 2. They have more than a small majority. I don't know that the majority, apart from establishing that they have a credibility with the population, I don't know that they need a majority in a legislative sense, because it's not like the parliament here. And though they can make, though they can make assembly laws, not many assembly laws have been made, and I don't know that they need unanimity in order to get those laws passed. In any case, assembly laws have to be reviewed by the parliament. So, but arithmetically, I mean, there's no doubt that 10-2 is a good result. But I don't know that it offers them a greater ability to provide for Tobago. Because, in the last 4 years, they had 12-0.
Yes.
And there are many areas in Tobago that are still unsatisfied.
Is that one of the reasons why Watson Duke, Progressive Democratic Patriots, won Bell Garden, Roxborough, Delaford, and Farley Augustine won the Palatuvier Speyside area? Is that the reason, because of dissatisfaction, or is it because they had themselves cemented in that community?
Well, it's a little bit of both. There is a lot of dissatisfaction with the PNM in Tobago, but they remain the most mature and experienced and trustworthy outfit in the island. And if you ask the electorate, as you did recently in January there, 23rd, to vote people in, the electorate is smart, has demonstrated that it was smart enough to put a party there that is far more organized and far more experienced. That doesn't mean, of course, that there aren't problems. But there was no opposition to keep harping on those problems over the last 4 years. So there is dissatisfaction on a number of grounds, and there's a void to be filled. And the two parties, there were three really, but Robinson's successors are still there, through in the shape of the TOP, the Tobago Organization of the People, and the forwards. Now the top did not contest the elections, and the forwards did. The forwards are a derivative of the top.
That's right.
But the problem is that these new successors, inheritors of Robinson's party, have not affected, influenced, appealed to the people in the way that was expected. And not for the first time. It happened in the 2013 elections. It happened in the 2015 parliamentary elections. That they have not been getting the kind of traction that they want to have. And then Duke comes in, a new kid on the block, right? Comes in and fills some of that void by winning almost 3 seats.
Almost 3. One was won only by 5 votes.
By
yes.
5 votes. And there was another area in which they came close to the numbers that PNM enjoyed. But you have to note that if you have an electorate of 50,000 and 20-something thousand voted, what you really have is about 29,000 people who did not vote. In other words, the vast majority of the
people,
electorate
yes.
did not vote.
And that is something that folks would have to take note of. I want to get to Christlyn more in a moment, but let me just finish off this Duke situation because Watson Duke won 2 seats. True, he's charged, but man is innocent until proven guilty, so we won't waste time on that.
Yes,
Instead,
okay.
we will deal with the area of the Public Service Association. Should he remain as head of the Public Services Association, specifically considering that there may be conflict of interest as a result of that?
That's a good question. And I have answered it elsewhere in a different kind of way. The answer I'm going to give here is going to be a little different from the answer that I proffered elsewhere. And it's to ask ourselves, how do we know that something is right? Now, it's not illegal for Watson Duke to continue being the PSA president while also acquiring and prosecuting the role of minority leader. There's nothing illegal about it. The question is whether it is politically convenient or politically ethical to the extent that that sounds so oxymoronic that you can associate ethics with politics.
Yes, and these days particularly.
Exactly, because politics really stretches the issue. That's what you can get away with. Anyhow,
all morality too.
the way I am answering the question now is to go back into our history and to ask ourselves if there have been labor leaders who have at the same time held positions in our parliament. And I remember Basio Pandey himself. He was the leader of the Trinidad, the sugar workers.
All sugar estate factory workers, yes.
And he was the leader of the opposition. George Weeks was a labor leader, and he was a senator.
He was a senator, yes.
And he held on to the position. Now, I don't remember the arguments then about whether there was a conflict of interest which was injurious to either the union that they led or the nation in the sense that they were operating in the parliament. But I do know that they held both portfolios. So that's a precedent. 2 precedents I've just given you there. But then we also have a more recent precedent in the form of Jack Warner, who was president of CONCACAF, vice president of FIFA, and at the same time a minister. And most of the voices that commented on that state of affairs advised Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar and Jack himself that would create problems, ethical problems and conflict of interest problems, which in fact happened. But Jack was eventually forced to give up.
Because of a FIFA situation,
That's the story. But I'm just saying that in the FIFA situation, there was clearly conflict of interest there. How could you manage both? I suppose conflict in the sense that I don't know that there were issues that had to be determined and which would have arisen in relation to conflict of interest. But I do know that the question of his image, the impact of his image on his government was very, very, very important.
The shadow over him, the voice you're hearing is that
the clouds that he carried from FIFA affected the perception of Kamla's administration. And that was bad for them.
Yes.
Among many bad things, by the way. I don't think Kamla could have afforded to have another.
Right.
And in that sense, yes. But that's not conflict of interest now. That is just
a perception, a whole question of a shadow over your integrity,
correct.
as it
and
were.
You want your reputation to be better than it actually turned out to be. So to answer your question, I am not so sure yet that it is that there will be conflict of interest. If only because I haven't thought through this thing to see what the conflict of interest might be. I already am hearing that he's going to delegate some of his functions to one of his vice presidents, or I don't know how many vice presidents there are, because he wants to focus on. But yes, I would say in potential that is the case, but actually I couldn't give you at this moment possible areas of
specific areas of the conflict of interest.
Of conflict. But it would be nice, I feel, if he could devote himself to one or the other. And in this case, I would ask him to devote himself to opposition politics, because that area needs to be developed in Tobago, given the long time dominance of the PNM. For 20 years, Orville London was chief secretary. In the last 4 years, he had no opposition.
So
right?
we will see how he comes in as an effective voice. The voice you're hearing is that of political analyst, a former university lecturer. He is a man that you hear all the time. Not only does he look very young and very healthy this morning, but he sounds that way too. He is Dr. Winford James. Good to have you here. I want to take this because, as I said, we've got a long list of folks here this morning, but I do want to take you into what happened, transcended with Kamla, the opposition leader, Kamla Persad-Bissessar. On January 13, she wrote the United States President Donald Trump inquiring if FATCA will be repealed by his administration because, as she included in her letter, it has caused controversy in Trinidad, and this country's PM has refused to ask him the question, that is to ask Trump, as she asked the Prime Minister here to do. So she said, because I asked him and it didn't happen, I am writing you to ask you the question, is it your administration's intention to repeal FATCA? That, of course, I think was done to decide whether, in fact, we are going to support it or not. Was the opposition leader out of place to write to the President of the United States on a matter like this?
I would say that I'm going to answer the question eventually, but I'm first going to say that clearly, and not for the first time, she was trying to upstage the Prime Minister.
Or delegitimize at the same time.
Well, by upstaging, there would be some delegit or some effect of that kind. But it's really this is not the first time. Trying to do things that she thought the Prime Minister should do. I think it happened with Independence Day address, or was it that? But some address that she gave because the Prime Minister had not yet given his address. So showing that she had the pulse of the nation. She had a better sense of the pulse of the nation than he did. I don't know if she realizes that she's no longer the Prime Minister. There are some things you have to hang back on, right? So in the case now of her letter to President Trump, obviously there was an attempt to upstage the Prime Minister again. But what is the issue? There's no issue of repeal of FATCA. The United States has not said that it wants to repeal FATCA. The question of a repeal of FATCA is coming from the opposition.
That's right.
And I think Dr. Rowley is right to question the motive behind such a letter, since the idea of repeal has not arisen in America, and has not arisen in the discussion so far on or before the 13 had not yet arisen. Because what the opposition was telling the government is, look, if you send the issue to the JSC, we will support.
And they sent it to the JSC.
And they sent it to the JSC. And then even after they have done that, the letter goes.
Which is amazing.
Right. So that's crazy.
I even looked at the pretext used to write to about whether the administration will continue there. It was one where the Republicans introduced sometime last year or before some legislation for overhauling of the tax system, but the Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act was not mentioned anywhere inside of there.
No, they want that to stay, actually. Because you see, they want every
but of course,
cent
every
of
dollar
tax.
that's from outside by
from
the
outside.
citizens.
Yes.
So specifically, you were saying that let me ask you if that is what you're saying. The real fear of the opposition to signing this is what, Doctor? In your,
I don't know. I hear the Prime Minister making the accusation that they have cocoa in the sun. That they are
it's kind of cloudy outside, by the way.
wanting not to have that signed because of their own savings and their own spendings, their own sources of funding, which might not stand up to scrutiny. I heard the Prime Minister saying that. Now, he's far more informed than I. I don't have that information. But then he has said things before which have not come to fruition. You know what I mean? So we might see that as a political kind of response. But I do think that, to answer the question now, that the Prime Minister was out of place.
The opposition leader.
The opposition leader, was out of place to write President Trump on that matter when we have a government.
You are a very wise man. I say the more I speak to you, the brighter I get. So let me see if you can give me some sunlight inside of here. Do you think, all things considered, that FATCA is going to be passed?
I think it will be. I don't know how the opposition can live down the government's accommodation of them in a context where they were withholding their vote to the extent that the vote was necessary. You know, the government needed opposition support for the thing to pass. Except, of course, they changed one or two things in the act that do not require a bigger majority than a simple majority. But I think it will be. I think good sense will prevail eventually. Because, you know, the PNM has a record when they were in opposition of supporting government legislation. I mean, all you have to just go and ask somebody to go check.
Yes.
The number of pieces of legislation which the PNM provide support is very strong. But apparently they are not doing it this way. I mean, but the point is, they asked the government, look, just give us the JSC.
You got the JSC.
But the report is coming shortly, I think.
Yes.
We'll
see what's coming with
when that comes, how they will react. But I don't know what kind of politics is that. I don't know how they can win over the people they need to win over. I know the elections are about 3.5 years down the road, but I don't know how that, because the records are going to be there, you know.
Well, it's good seeing you. It is always good seeing you. Before I close down, I just have to ask you this final question, and I know I'm working against my time. Producer is going to look at me in a minute. 1999, the last time the country hanged somebody. Ramesh Lawrence Mirage says it's on the books. The Attorney General said it's on the books. He said, let us go and do the hanging thing. This will be a deterrent. Senior Counsel Elton Prescott, who once chaired the Commission of Inquiry into the death penalty, say, I believe we can categorize this, and once we get it into categories, we can have murder one, and we should bring back the death penalty. How do you say?
I disagree completely with anybody who is calling for the death penalty in order to solve crime. And I disagree simply because, I mean, the facts suggest that the death penalty has not deterred the commission of crime. You know, it's the kind of thing that people appeal to for political and religious effect. You know, people think that, you know, people have been killed, have been punished by death for their crimes. But if the reason for the death penalty is to lower the crime rate, it's to lower the rate of serious crime, there is no country where the evidence points that has happened.
It has not been a deterrent, is what you're saying.
It has not been a deterrent. In fact, and people who call for the death penalty in Trinidad and Tobago wait until the last moment as a last resort to say, let's bring it in. Now, so let's ask one or two questions. When the people who are hanged, where are they before they are hanged? They are in the jails. So they are off the streets and they cannot do harm to the population. Right? Now, when you kill them, you're not achieving, except you're saying that the death penalty is going to deter further commission of crime.
That is what it's arguing.
Right. But that hasn't happened anywhere. So the point is, the better thing is to move away from that, move the people off the streets, right? Have swift justice. That is a quick institution implementation of your fines and your jail terms and so on, which doesn't happen in this country. The pace of justice is far too slow, and the justice system is clogged with cases that are unresolved for years and years. That's where the problem really lies. It doesn't lie in the state killing people.
Rekha Ramjet, an attorney and the head of the ILP, will be joining us at 11 o'clock. That's part of the discussion we will have. Dr. James, always my pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming down this morning.
My pleasure, this morning at least.
To get you down here really is appreciated greatly. All right. Thank you very much. So you have yourself a very nice day. You're inside Brunch after Dr. James. We are going on to talk about the transparency report, the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute report that talks about Trinidad and Tobago being one of the corrupt states in the world, one of the worst ones that is. We're going to come back and talk about that after.